So getting into our conversation for this hour, we want to talk about youth and youth inclusion and what the youth are all about and what they want. We're joined by Haya Dennis, and Haya is the chairperson of the Kenya Youth with Disability Association. Good morning, Haya.
Good morning to you.
How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Karibu sana to Fixing the Nation.
Very grateful.
This is where we do it one conversation at a time. You'll tell us about your association, and then also let's talk about what Gen Zs want. Are you at peace? But first, Jano is going to welcome you with the day's quote.
There's no ululation. Today's quote, Dennis, is from Coretta Scott King, who of course is the widow of Martin Luther King Jr. And she said, "Freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation." What do you think about that? Freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation.
It is aptitude, to my understanding, and it's very accurate. Not only correct, but accurate, such that every generation has their own iniquities that they want to solve. And that calls for freedom expression, that's all for freedom fighting. And it's worth intergenerational change.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Before we go into KYDA and a little bit about what it does, I mean, I'm curious to know what you think is the biggest fight for freedom that your generation is pushing for. We've heard about, obviously, the tax burden. We've heard about lack of access to justice, to health. But if you were to sum up this fight for freedom for your generation, what would it be?
The generation that are currently in majority existence are fighting for freedom, that the voices be heard. They want a space where they can be very sure that when they speak, there is a listening ear. And there is a listening that process what they say and do an implementation that is visible and very significant.
Freedom of agency. Freedom of agency. Sums it up really well. Makes sense.
It does.
Definitely.
Agency over and above everything, because it starts with agency. True. Yeah.
When I think of any time that the issues of persons with disabilities are discussed on a national stage, with the exception of now in the recent past with, for example, Senator Crystal Asige's bill, I think of it as something very tokenistic. It's either an afterthought, that is like, haya tulisahau, na constitution inasema, or it's to try and get, the vote of a specific block of people. Is that true to the best of your knowledge, or is there some goodwill, I would say, as far as legislators are concerned?
I was in the process of that bill.
Yes.
Most at the public participation of it. And I would be happy that I contributed not only as a youth, but as an intellectual relative to it, such that there was some lacuna, meaning there were gaps in that law that was formed in 2003.
Yes.
And if you look at the historical background of it, it was funny. Then President of the Republic of Kenya, the late His Excellency Emilio Mwai Kibaki, was involved in an accident.
Yes.
And then he had mobility issues, so could not access the various premises that are government premises. So then he realized, okay, then they need to be a law that enables me to access these premises and many other Kenyans who has the same conditions as I am. And that was formed, that law. So you find that from the aspect, on the angle in which that law was formed, was already in itself inadequate.
Right.
So it had to have inadequacy that had to be corrected later on. It took a lot of time, to my understanding, because it's a bill that has been in Parliament for quite some time. But luckily enough, in 2025, it saw the light in the tunnel. Yeah.
I'm glad that the light at the end of the tunnel was finally realized. You said you're actively involved, especially in the public participation. What does public participation look like when Kenya has issues with accessibility and, basically making anything accessible for persons with disabilities? So, how then does public participation look like?
Thank you very much. If you study the law of public administration, it talks about the doctrine of public participation. and the doctrine of public participation in the understanding of itself and vis-a-vis the practicability that is in the ground, it's 2 worlds apart.
Okay.
There has been a norm, many Kenyans only participate in public. The threshold of public participation is in question, not only to the general public, but even to the jurisprudential outlook in various courts of law. So there has not been a serious threshold that in Kenya, public participation should look at this extent, because that inadequacy comes from the primary law, which is the Constitution. So there is where the problem starts.
Okay.
So I think when there will be a correction, I studied the BBI, they tried to address it. The only act in Kenya that addresses public participation in its fullness is the Climate Change Act. Most of the acts, even the Disability Act that is already in place, still don't have a serious threshold, because public participation is one of the serious doctrines that has to be in place in policy reforms. So to my understanding, many youths, again, still are not aware of even this Disability Act.
Right.
There has not been a breakdown to them and majority of the community who have disability that what does this act brings to you or brings to us. So even at the implementation, at the formation stage, few youths were involved. I think there was some rush. And, there were 2 bills in Parliament. One was not a money bill.
Right.
The other one was a money bill. And parliamentarians definitely will always go for the money bill.
True.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah. The public participation, we need to unpack completely and we've said it before, but we keep on adding layers, because one, we said it's inadequate because of the numbers, right? And sometimes the timeline's given. You can't put a Gazette notice on Wednesday for public participation on Thursday and call it adequate. We've talked about numbers, we've talked about timing, we've talked about the inclusion of all persons within the population.
Yeah, sure.
So then if we've not met any of those thresholds, where do we...
I think now that we have a keen eye,
Yeah.
you're right, it's to completely unpack public participation in its totality,
Right.
to make sure that even at scale, it's accessible. I want to go a little bit back and talk about KYDA. If you can briefly speak to what it is, and even how it's playing a role in maybe trying to help with public participation.
In my own wisdom or lack of it, as a growing young man in the village, I saw some inadequacies that came about by people taking seats of persons with disability who are youths. Well, they are not. And they are benefiting from it, and they are riding from the outlook ignorance. And I had then to work hard from primary, went to high school, and competed effectively, went to campus, the University of Nairobi School of Law. So while there, I had the knowledge of law, I had the knowledge of privilege of being around, I had the knowledge of privilege of being in the city and close to the offices of administration. So then I saw that many youths who have disability are still not aware of very many frameworks that work in line with disability representation, inclusion, and all that. So then I decided to bring it together so that we form a bigger coalition, a bigger association that addresses our needs, such that mainly to be involved in 4 thematic areas: awareness and advocacy, research, training, and capacity building, so that we do not be left behind. Not that there are not potential in these young people. There are very many potential that they carry, and that it's only that they have not been recognized. So this association is put in place to recognize this potential in line with the 4 thematic areas. So it represents youths across the country without any ethnic divide, without any regional divide, as you are. Yes.
I want to broaden it because you've said youth. Let's broaden the conversation to the youth now. Youth here is anybody below 35.
Sure.
According to the law. But let's talk about the youth that, agitating for political change, for inclusion, for their voices to be heard, for what you said earlier,
Yes.
the agency.
Yes.
The headline in the Taifa Leo today, Radicalia Gen Z, talks about that, because of the agitation of the youth, the vigogo of our politics in this country are now lost at sea. They're wondering, so now, we're used to organizing people in a certain way.
Yeah, sure.
Vijana wapate nafasi za ajira. That is the word that we go with.
That has all been
Right? And we use the youth to be our political machine and campaign vehicles. Same thing we do with the women. And then we get into office and we come back and we keep just playing the politics with them. And this article, plus a similar article on the Daily Nation on page 7, it's saying that the youth are now agitating for different, for better. I want to ask, Dennis, is it all the youth? Is it a majority of the youth that are of that mindset?
Thank you for that question, Latif. If I'm not wrong, you are connecting that to Mandamano, because there have been agitation that do not only happen online, they happen on the streets. And in one term, there are protests. Protest, in its definition simply, is just to come out and directly participate. You protest directly. It is a direct representation. The Constitution has two forms of representation, indirect and direct. And direct involves protest, picketing, demonstrations, and all that. Well, as one of the youths in this very country, and I walk around very many counties, I talk to very many youths, and I think very many youths are now watching live because they know that one of their own wants to speak from their heart. Right now, very many youths are in unison for change. And if you look keenly, even leaders who want to contest for seats for Rambo gubernatorial in cities, major cities, are stuck. Because initially, they used to organize themselves in tribal balance. Now, for example, here in Nairobi, they used to know that a certain area, they are this particular ethnic group, and if I take this number from this region, from this area, I add with this number, then I come up with a narrative, then it will sell. They are stuck because youths as at now, they are what we call pan-Kenya. They have a formation of unity that descends the ethnic tribal balance that has always been there. So that is one. What they want is that they have owned the country. They have known that there is no any other country that now belongs to them. It is only this Kenya, and it is upon them to speak out without any tribal balance, without any form of discrimination that are highlighted in Article 27 of the Constitution. So majority of youths are pro that movement. And let me take you a little bit historically, that case studies that are not only exist in Kenya, they had existed before, even in other countries. If you look at in 1968, in China, there was a cultural movement where Mao Zedong, who was the Communist Party leader then in China, so Chinese were revolving against a cultural change, that majority of youths came out and expressed themselves, and definitely there was that change that happened. And even in South Africa, in 1976, when the language of Afrikaner wanted to be introduced as a mode or a medium of education in many schools, they came about and they talked, they came to the streets as our young people are doing. So I want to confirm that majority of youths are for change. And the change that they are for are I would say there are three prompts. There's an economic reform. There is inclusion and participation.
Yep.
And there is unemployment. Majority are, and even accountability in government. So those are the things that they want to achieve as they come out, as they address those things. Yes.
Do you get that sense, Janet? That there's a majority that are pro-change and they're pushing for change, and this is across the country.
Actually, it's interesting you say that, Eric, because I was going to say there is a majority, but there's also an important minority that I feel is pushing against it, whether it's because they're co-opted. We saw, the alleged hired goons. For me, they still form part of a bloc that either doesn't see this as a priority, is easily co-opted, but then they can't be discounted because that's still a voice that's missing in the bigger conversation, right? Do you guys feel the same?
I genuinely worry that we are in an echo chamber. That's my biggest fear, that I am seated with or surrounded by, whether it's family, friends, workmates, my algorithms on social media are just fed to give me what I want, and that kwa ground vitu ni different.
Yeah.
That is my incredibly big fear. I think there's a lot of discontent around the country.
Yeah.
Is it enough to actually push change that could go to an election today and we go behind candidate X who is anyone other than William Ruto? I'm not sure.
And even before Dennis answers, you're also not 100% sure, yeah? You've said it before.
I keep saying it all the time. When I look back at the bravado with which the political supremos talk, they have access to networks across the country that are feeding them information on what's happening. They have their networks of political people. And the way they speak, the way they respond, and they respond outside of Nairobi, tells you that they have an audience that is listening to what they're saying, and that audience is agreeing with what they're saying. So when you see members of parliament, we had Robin Boy here, and Robin Boy was saying, tell your MP, what do you want him to do? When MPs are behaving the way they're behaving in parliament, it's because they have this sense of confidence that, you know what, on the ground, my people are not as agile. There was some flare-up of anger last year, but that anger is not going to translate into anything that affects me. If I do not align myself with Raila, with Ruto, if I don't align myself with however Kalonzo goes or however Rigiji goes, that is still how I'm organizing politically. That this whole talk of what youth want change is surface level.
I think Latif, you are informed correctly, but not accurately. Because comrade,
come slowly.
I'm going to use that one. Okay, go on.
Because I, to some extent, I have genes of politics, and it demands that you do not show weakness, that you do not show lack of confidence, that you speak to some extent that makes people, that instill fear or otherwise. So when members of parliament says that it is neither here nor there, it is actually expected of them to speak in a way that makes people have some fear that, all right, so we've been doing nothing, okay, that you'll still come and mobilize us how you've been used to. Technically, because you've now spoken of elections, in 2000, because I have studied elections since, of course, I was born later in the year 2000, but I had the privilege of going to school, and I've studied elections from actively from 1997 all the way to 2022. And if you look how elections have been, there is always an improvement of information that an election that happened in 1997 was not a similar election that happened in 2000. Same to 2007, same to 2013, same to 2017, same to 2022.
Yeah.
And now, significantly, in 2027, majority of youths who were not eligible voters in 2013 are now eligible voters. And not only that they are eligible voters, they understand what they want for. And they were even saying that when that time comes, because their role on digital activism will transcend to them having even a parallel voter streaming to some extent, that they will be having full information.
What is this based on, Dennis?
It is based on...
is this a wish?
It is based on a wish.
Okay.
And a wish has always been, has always graduated to a success or achievement. Because if you do not wish for something, you will not achieve it. So you only wish, then you work on it, then you achieve. Let me then withdraw that statement, because I see it is agitating you. and probably it has come untimely. But probably what I'm addressing here is that youths are not only going to vote, they are again going to protect their votes. They are going to see that whoever they are voting for is no longer how they used to see voting, because now they have elected leaders, they have seen their behaviors, and even how they verbally diarrhea.
I wait to see.
And lack of accountability in it.
I wait for that day. You've studied them. I've also looked at those patterns. And yeah, there's always this agitation. But previously, yes, it's always been led towards the political, tribal bastions. Now there's a bit of a push to try and remove that. But my fear always is whether there is a critical mass that is thinking the way that, you're saying that some people are thinking. Let's take a break and continue this conversation shortly. Haya Dennis, the chairman of the Kenya Youth with Disability Association, is our guest. What do the youth want? Gen Zs, are the Gen Zs happy? What is it that would make them happy? Keep it here for that. You can also call us and contribute to all this conversation on our digital platforms. Back in a moment.
Wazi. I'm telling you. Omena Republic, morning fixers. Jano, tell Latif there's always a first time for everything. There's always a first time for everything.
Pass
my regards to Mariam. Hi, Mariam.
Nimesalimika. Thank you. Also, Dennis has also given me some perspective that it is, of course, in the best interest of the political class to portray power, confidence, and until.
Yes.
It's true.
True.
So it's just like thumping your chest, but within it, you know that there's fear, you're not really sure how things are going to go, but you can't show that.
But to like raw doom to gorilla like
then later you're like, what do I do? What do I do?
What happened? Or once you move from the public sphere, you go back there, you're like,
it's true.
Shaking.
But even now they've been good. We talked about echo chamber. You used that term well. I still think something is shifting.
Definitely.
Because I haven't seen that level of MPs trying to read, for example, a speech on behalf of, and they're like told, Bure Kabisa, please leave. That didn't really happen before. Where
That's
people even on the ground were like, we don't want to hear salams.
True.
Because they too will realize that they don't have access to the things that they require. And hopefully that will be the wake-up call. Or maybe they have access and I don't know. That's G. Access.
Yeah, we kumbe ni French, it's not we. So things can be tricky, guys.
Yes.
But of course, we're still in conversation with Haya Dennis, talking about young people and, of course, the movement that is coming up, and how to make sure that it is not just tokenistic. Because as I had asked him earlier, a lot of the times when issues of persons with disabilities are brought to the foreground, it's because someone wants to use them as a campaign tool. And yeah, it's not coming from, hey, genuinely, one, our constitution guarantees the rights of persons with disabilities as it does for everyone, but also because, you know, they're deserving and I believe in this cause. Let me ask you, do you think that there has been any shift from members of parliament who are not persons with disabilities, who are genuine in caring for young people and persons with disabilities specifically?
I thank you very much for that very question. And I would start from the point that if you see that there are still very many things that are lacking in terms of disability inclusion, while we have legislators, that is a clear show that either they're doing the least or the bare minimum, or they know what they're doing, they know what they should do, but they're not doing it to the bare maximum. This is brought about by what is affecting the legislative responsibility for members of parliament who are nominated to represent persons with disability is, one, party loyalty. Because as you speak, most of the time they want to foster the party loyalty or the party policies. But then they tend to forget the inclusion aspect of it. And to some extent, they tend to be damped about it. And I think I would suggest that many youths with disability to take up political seats so that we not only depend on the nomination, we actually depend on representation from election, so that we be involved in the election, so that we have the confidence that we were elected. We were not only given privilege, because when you're nominated, it is a privilege that you have been done to.
Which can be withdrawn anytime.
It can be withdrawn anytime. And you can be asked, what is your constituency? And for Ambo, there are questions that I've seen members who are representing us there being asked, and it is out of intimidation. So they are then forced to bow to their masters and not to the people they deem to represent. Some do not even have a iota or what they should do or what they should be happening, because, you know, things are dynamical. What was urgent yesterday might not be urgent today or even tomorrow. So then there should be an active process of involving young people and all divides, so that they be aware of what is urgent for us now and what was urgent yesterday that no longer carries
urgent today. I want to hang on when you said that representation. It's, you know, everybody from everywhere, all facets of life, across the population. Someone is asking, how are the grievances of PWD youths in the villages heard as well as enacted? Because that could be another echo chamber, you know, or another laguna. Let me use the word.
Yes,
lacuna, sorry.
Yes.
Yes, that we're not aware of. You're thinking persons with disabilities, but then you're only speaking to urban, young, you know, persons with disabilities.
You see, when you ask members of parliament who are representing youths or persons with disability, they will tell you that there is a council for persons with disability that go and take your grievances there. That council has always been underfunded. And to some extent, it cannot operate its responsibility to the bare maximum, which entails them reaching to the villages and the people in the reserve, not only in the urban. So it's a question that comes from underfunding, because no one really wants to speak about inclusion. Still, we are at the stage of integration. That, oh, fine, we've seen he is very potential, let's bring him here.
What's the difference between integration and inclusion?
Fine. So inclusion is a situation where you are not only being taken because you have disability, but all processes all systems have been made possible that any person can participate in. Now, for example, in an institution where all buildings are accessible,
Yes.
accessibility, either physical or digital, right? It is about a system that has made possible that any person can participate in. So integration, there is a situation where they see as a potential in you, and they want you to come in search of potential there, but not in the aspect of you being included, you being given an opportunity or a privilege.
Integration is tokenistic, basically.
Very much.
It's one-third gender, not, you know, like that.
Yeah, that now, because of the law said that 5% of people of the opportunity should be for persons with disability. Because of that policy, that they are now trying, that now that we are hiring 150, so can we just find at least one person with disability for the purposes of it?
Yeah. To tick a box.
To tick a box. Yeah. I want to hear more about this question of peace, young people and peace, and whether you can even speak to youth with disabilities participation in things like the protests. Are there certain protections that people need to keep in mind? Has it been challenging? But let's speak to the broader peace issue.
Thank you very much. When I speak of peace, I'll speak about it in two fronts. I'll speak about the participation, and I will speak about the protection. When I speak about peace, meaning there's a conflict. So conflict can either be ideological, can either be participating in armed conflict, or whatsoever that would otherwise bring effect to another party, or even to both, affect them significantly or negatively. So as at now, there's a conflict. As you can see, there's a conflict between young people, the Gen Z, and the government at large. And there are chants all over that one person should go, this person should go, that we reject, we occupy. Meaning there's already been a conflict. Meaning one person feels that they are not fully, there are inequalities that are existing. And these inequalities are existing in forms of lack of job opportunity, lack of proper governance, lack of accountability, right? And lack of inclusivity, which comes about by let them participate, let them being involved in various processes, as I'd said before, in the doctrine of public participation. So then, that will graduate to protests as they have been here. So in the events of these protests, none of them have always ended successfully in terms of one person not being killed, another person not being maimed. In many occasions that Gen Z, we started protesting from last year, many lives have been lost. So meaning there has been a conflict. And that conflict have had results of families losing their loved ones. So while addressing that, I will talk about the resolution 2250. That is in 2015, when the United Nations, the Security Council, came up with a resolution called 2250, which addresses peace building. And it addresses peace building by involving youths. In one, participating as a pillar of youth, peace, and security, as part of that as part of that council, that while there's a conflict, youths should be able to participate and be included in either peace building or peacekeeping whenever there's a conflict. And this addresses early warnings and even the aftermath of such a conflict. Now, for example, if there's likelihood of other protests coming about. So what participation says or states that what can be done so that to avoid such a protest. How can youths be involved? Can their voices be heard? Can they be brought in a meaningful dialogue so that to prevent such a likelihood of a protest that might come and many lives to be lost? Because as I do believe, we should not only have fallen heroes, we should have living heroes.
So how do we do that in the Kenyan context, in the current Kenyan context?
In the current Kenyan context.
It's the youth who are agitating. It's the youth who are coming out to speak, right? It's the youth who are saying we want to be heard, we want to be involved, we want to be engaged, all right? But then it's also the youth who end up dying in whatever circumstance. So how do we change that?
It has been not only contextualized, but is very problematic. In the context of Kenya, I think one person understands peace, the other person doesn't understand. And the other person who understands peace has a notion that is different from another person who understands it, or otherwise. So the conflict that has always been there is when young people come to streets, when we come to streets, then there is a police, or we meet the other arm of government that always believe that these people are not correct, these people should be chased, these people should be tear gassed, these people should be shot. So I would, in my own wisdom or lack of it, first urge that the other arm of government who have understanding of peace, they should come forward and they should be the first people to call for this dialogue so that people be open-minded. They say, this is what have been happening.
Right.
Now, what should we do?
Before you answer the what should we do, we have a caller, Virginia, calling in from Kiambu, who has a question or a comment. Good morning, Virginia.
Hi, good morning. My name is Virginia, yes?
Yes.
My worry is about all these presentations they are working with disability NGOs and all that. I want to understand, wachana na wenye tunawekangwa kwa parade, tiambiwa tunasaidiwa and all that. I want to understand ni wangapi wamesaidika. How many can they count wako na disability na wamesaidika? Can they parade them? Because inakuanga tunauzwa huko nje. These guys make money. And nobody is talking about wakati kuna crisis, where are these people with disability counted? Wakati kuna floods, where are they? Nani yako hapo kwa rescue? And I've asked that many times. And now we get silence due to your question. Hawa wenye sijui ma chairman, sijui hawa wenye wako juma officials. Always they make sure nobody questions them. Now I'm asking on this national TV, how many have they helped? Now I can make sure wamesaidika. That's the question.
Before you go, Virginia, are you a person with disabilities?
Yes. Tunakapitia huku chini wacha tu. And they always categorize us, kama hutashona viatu, you're supposed to be a tailor. It's as if a person with disability in Kenya, huna future.
Yeah.
You are not counted as if you deserve to have a decent future. What do they do? Actually, because other easy devices peke yake, they are crazy expensive. Utafikaje from Samburu, Turkana, Marsabit, Moyari to Hapa Western just to afford easy devices? What are they doing about it?
Yeah.
Can we just talk the truth? Persons with disability wanga wanagrupiwa and then they are sold out as a pool, and these guys ndio wanga wana benefit. They should get the truth and they make sure watu wanasaidika kwa ground. Sio story ya kutuparade all the time. We are tired.
Okay.
Thank you. Virginia, you've spoken to so many things. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day as well. And you've spoken to a lot of very critical issues. One is that tokenistic approach that we have to dealing with anything that has to do with persons with disabilities. And she said, she's even gone into the nitty-gritty, it's a group. The way we're saying right now, persons with disabilities, but that varies. It's such a wide spectrum, and everybody has individual needs, even within, a large grouping. That's one. Two is how often, how we then get either funding, things like that, but never trickles down to the ground. So the issue is used politically. Yep. That's one. Two, there's funding that never really trickles down. In your experience, what? Because at the end of the day, you're not a lawmaker, but you do work in a sector that sees what is happening.
Definitely.
How then where have you seen it work, that representation actually works, the money flows down to who it's meant to be? Where does it work?
Definitely, that's a good question. Disability is a whole industry for NGOs, for governments, and people have been billionaires because of the word disability. They ride in the vehicle of ignorance that has been over time. And what my colleague is raising, Virginia, is what is happening. Sooner or later, you will see here that before elections, many organizations, and what I know, many organizations are now writing proposals to many donors to fund them, that they are training people with disability on elections, on those, and even peace building. Yeah? While they do not mean it. And what actually even alarms me, that many boards that we have on matters disability mainstreaming, many chairs do not have disability, that what they say, that we have a passion for persons with disability. Yeah. Who told you that you must have a passion? Because we have people who are merited, who have disability, who know where the shoe pinches them.
Right.
They feel the pinch of pain. While you are going to the next end of having a passion. What if that passion stops?
True. What if your passion becomes farming tomorrow?
Yes. Yeah. So have people benefited from? Virginia is saying she doesn't feel like it's been beneficial across. She's asking. Yeah.
For her, I think she says, it doesn't get to me. That's for sure. Also, the fact that it's lump sum, it's not lump sum. Sorry, it's a grouping. These are persons with disabilities. But what is my specific disability?
Exactly.
What do I need? Samuel is on the line from where, Phil? Nyeri. All right. Good morning, Samuel.
Oh, how are you?
Very well. How are you?
Oh, my name is Samuel Wangombe from Nyeri, Katubiro Tetu Nyeri. You can call me a manager. So what I'm trying to say, I hear that they're talking about, and we see the government here wakitia gas hawa watu na tulisikia vibaya sana. So what I'm trying to ask, sasa hao mavijana watapata right yao lini? Kwa sababu sasa ni wapi watafanya nini? Kwa sababu wakita kila mahali wanapigwa tia gas. Wakienda kuuliza haki yao, kama ni hao watu wako na ninio na wheelchairs na wengine niona wakipigwa tia gas. So right yao itaonekana lini, na ama ni wapi mzuri? Kwa sababu serikali iliahidi hawa watu kazi, kawaahidi mambo mengi na hakuna kitu imefanyika. So wakienda kule kwa police station wanapigwa tia gas. So what can you tell them? Because there are so many here, but that's why you hear ukienda kuko nyenye unasikia almost 50 men were dying or are hanging. Because ukienda huku unapigwa na polisi, ukienda huku una kazi. What can you tell them? Because there are so many they don't have work. Because if you go to maandamano, the serikali inawaadhiriti. Wakikuja huku hakuna, wamesoma wengine hawajasoma. So how can you help you NTV? Because you are the best TV in Kenya. That's why they are trying to close your TV. Atuliona tukasema wafuge, wasifuge, sisi tuko na NTV, mnatusaidiaga sana. Tusaidia mavijana wako na shida, utueleze vile watafanya. That's why unaona huko nyewe ukiangalia vile tumeongoza Kenya mzima kujinyonga, kujifanya mambo mengi kwa sababu ya mashida. So how can you help them? Because wananiambia niwaulizie kwa sababu wengine wajui kupiga simu. Please help them because how can they do? Because you get a police tear gas. Lakini wale nimeshangilia wale tu maaskari wamekataa mambo ya Muru comment because hakuna haja ya kuua, utaua, unamkiongoza sema utaua, utaabduct, lakini wewe huwa wote abduct wote. Kuna wale watabaki watasemaje after kutoka kwa serikali.
Asante sana Samuel.
Tusaidieni hapo, tuko salama na tunampenda sana station yenu number 1 in Kenya.
Thank you so much. Tunashukuru sana.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Dennis, we are 2 minutes or so. Quite a bit to answer to.
Right.
So I don't know how you...
I'm going to break them down very.
Yes, and then on our part, it's to continue.
Yeah, absolutely,
this
yes.
part.
Yes.
Bringing things to light, holding people accountable, people in positions of leadership, interrogating, giving news with context, not just reporting.
Yep.
And I think that's our bit in fixing the nation.
Good. Yeah.
Now, Kenya Young Youth with Disabilities Association.
So thank you very much. To begin with, few people have been assisted from the so-called fundings for persons with disability. Majority of people who have been assisted are people who are not having disability and they're living good life and they don't care. And that is something that must be changed, something that must be looked into. Delving into what the gentleman from Nyeri has raised, it is very true that in many questions that we want to come out and address the issues that are affecting us. We met with tear gas canisters, water cannons, bullets, and all that. And that brings me to wonder, now, to what extent would we express ourselves in Article 33, to what extent will we enjoy our freedom rights? Because if a minister or people who we trust with the social contract come about and boast with disdain that they will be protecting such a kind of people who make torture or even shoot people, then they would be protected by themselves. So the confidence between the common mwananchi and the government continues to derail. But I would not want such a situation to come to be. I would want a situation where people can come, people can share, people can air their views, and they can be heard, and the implementation can be done. I was talking about peace. The last bit of it is in protection. That in such kind of conflicts, there are people that must be protected. It pains me that a person with disability, who for Ambo is a hawker here, and a protest boom, and they are being tear gassed, and they do not have even how to move, the mobility aspect of it. I saw the other time, one of persons who had visual impairment was tear gassed, had nowhere to go, and was stranded. That it makes life even more harder for these people. And we are still preaching inclusion. So the protection, a bit of it is very important. And the organizations here in Kenya that I would want to recognize, the Horn of Africa, headed by Judy Kimamo, and Saji and Kinaderiko Uko. I mean, these are organizations that foster for peace. So I would want that to happen. Okay. I am championing for inclusion. I'm championing for inclusion of persons with disability, for youths, their voice to be heard, our voice to be heard, so that we be involved, we be made important.
Hi, Dennis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And keep doing what you're doing. And just like Virginia said, make sure that there's action and that it translates into benefits across the country for all people with all forms of disability. Dennis is the chair of the Kenya Youth with Disability Association. He's been our guest. In the next hour, we speak to Cop Shakur. That's what you call him on X. You'll find him on X, Cop Shakur, on very many things. He's a former cop, and his perspectives on the Gen Z movement, the protest, the push for change. Keep it here for that. It's 9 a.m.